what we usually do is like you just introduce yourself.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm Mac Smiff. Grew up mostly in Portland, Oregon.
Detail?
Consider myself to be somewhat of a journalist, an editor, father, husband. Some say I'm an activist. I'm not an organizer. I'll tell you that much. I'm an analyst, and I try to be a liaison between people so that the people can communicate properly.
Word. Your history in Portland, you born and raised?
I wasn't born here. I moved here in '92, Bulls versus Blazers. I was 11. So.
Where are you from originally?
In New York City, Queens.
Okay, yeah, for sure. That's what's up. Big up New York. You know what I'm saying? Your beginnings in the Portland scene. I know music, hip hop.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like a nerd, you know what I'm saying? Just like a nerd. I was living in Vancouver for a bit, hated it up there, came down here to play basketball a little bit. Ended up actually not playing basketball, ended up working in Nike. And my little bro was like, bro, we should start rapping. And I was just like, no.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
One of the sickest ever to touch a mic in the city, though.
He's nice.
So people understand.
He's nice,
yeah.
and
Hanif
the Barber. And we decided, let's just do it. So we started rapping, started the 7 Science thing. I went off to college for a year, came back, started having kids, kept on rapping, and somewhere in that mix, of being a father and trying to do music and my brother getting locked up and all kind of stuff, I really ended up getting into journalism a bit. And I'd always been a writer. Writing had always been my thing. So somewhere around like 2010, I started like blogging and just kind of getting my opinions out there. And I ended up teaming up with this magazine called We Out Here that, out of Salem. And they had just kind of started up. They were kind of doing some hip hop stuff about the local scene, and within a couple of years, I actually ended up taking it over, and now I own We Out Here. And I turned it into a Portland-based magazine, and just really made it a focus to see artists that we like and give them a platform. This way, they could bring in their fans who could say, "Oh, these people have good taste, and let's go see who else locally is dope." And also just to kind of be a hub for local music, so that when people from out of town said, how can I find the Portland music? We could say, just go right here. And for a while that worked.
Yeah, that's what's up. So we're Vortex. How'd you get involved with that?
So Vortex started about, 5-6 years ago. The homie Chris hit me up. I really didn't even know Chris, except he was coming out to like some events and things like that. And somebody linked us up. I can't remember exactly who, but he was trying to do a shoot for one of their first, I think it was their 5th magazine maybe, this one up here. And he needed some help with the hip hop because he was like, yo, I do like local music stuff and I'm really into the scene. He's really into like from like a, like a DIY perspective, like how can we help these musicians and artists. He also created a company called Music Portland, which does a lot of work with musicians here. So he reached out to me like, I'm trying to get the hip hop scene more involved in my magazine. I feel like the last few magazines, it's not really inclusive of the whole scene. It's really just the white music. That's what I know. That's where I come from. But I need help. So I was like, bet. Like, I'm gonna hit up my guy Fontaine. I'm gonna hit up my guy Rashid Jamal. Hit some people. Saw who was available, and we just popped out there for a photo shoot. And that's really all it was. It was just me hooking the homie up with a photo shoot. He seemed like a good dude. He had some good people that he knew. That's how I work. Got it done, and then before I knew it, he was like, yo, I want to use you on the cover. And I'm like, I'm not even rapping, you know what I'm saying? And so that kind of just started us on like a friendship and a journey. And I started writing for his magazine, doing the artist, the upcoming artist sections. I think it's Artist to Watch is the name of the section. And really just like putting on for a lot of the artists in the city in that way, in addition to the other ways I've already been doing. And that's kind of the Vortex story. So this year came along and there wasn't no concerts, there wasn't a lot of stuff. So he was kind of like, Chris was like, I'm ready to step away from this magazine in general. I've been doing it for 5 years now. I want other things, And he was like, I'm looking for someone to take it over. He's like, but what I want to do with the next few really is have like some guest editors and give people a chance. And the first person I thought of was you. So I was like, bro, I can really appreciate that. Like you could have picked anybody. He was like, well, I feel like you need the opportunity. You've been running this magazine. You've been doing all kinds of journalism, and you've been pushing this movement. As far as social justice, I would love to see what you come up with. And I was like, well, first thing is I'm gonna fire everybody, because I'm going to do this all black. I'm just doing one, so I'm doing all black contributors. I was like, will you just step aside and be my assistant? He was like, yeah. So I was like, that's a real one right there. So that's what we did. True. I got all black photographers, all black writers, all black everything, and we did everything. And he just helped us with, he had the whole format there, and I learned a ton. I learned a ton on how to do that magazine and how to do a magazine, a print magazine. So like now I have a print magazine.
Yeah. What, for those who may not quite understand, why is it so important to amplify black voices and culture, especially here in Portland?
Because if we don't, they pretend we don't have it. When we talk about the Portlandia narrative, I think what we're oftentimes truly saying is that white people have just decided what the story of Portland is, and we didn't get a say. That's really why it's frustrating. It's not because it's not true so much. There's a lot of really goofy, weird stuff that happens here, and we all know it. I've definitely been arrested for like, oh, where was this chicken farmed? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Get them chicken nuggets, boy. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's like, that's not all there is to Portland. And to pretend that there is really to erase a whole different side of Portland.
And there seems to be, and I don't know, I mean, there's multiple reasons for it, but there's a lot of history here, so be it black history, that I think is totally just not even known, not even talked about. And I think when you talk about amplifying black voices, especially here in the city, I think that's a big thing that I think people need to recognize. Is we've had Vanport, we've had many instances of all different types of racism. There was laws on the books. Black people wasn't even allowed in this state forever.
I think about things like a Black Wall Street and Roseburg, and how as soon as black people started doing good, they tore it down. Here in Portland, Albina, all that, they just tore it down. We started doing well, they tore it down. But one of the reasons I focus so much on press is because I feel like if we were able to create a strong black press corps in Portland, Oregon, like you can't burn that down.
Yeah.
And you can't kill us with press. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't do that shit. Like, it's never gonna fly. But if we could really build a strong machine as far as communications for black people here, I think it could be amazing. And I think it's something I think that it wouldn't just be for black people. I think it would start off that way, but we all know that when black people do anything and don't involve white people come flying to it. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you were involved as far as like covering the protests over the summer. You did a lot of like great live insight. I watched a couple of your feeds, stuff like that. What was it like, man? Like being there, I would say your involvement in the emotions of the moment. Because I was there a couple nights and participated in a couple marches. I had never felt anything that emotionally powerful for me to be involved in something like that. I mean, what was it like for you in the city?
So I was involved in a lot of stuff. When it comes to like, I separate these in my mind at least using certain words so that may not translate like right away for everyone. But when it came to the marches, I felt like we definitely had some of the best marches I'd ever been in my life. I've been involved in marches and activism and direct actions for years. Some of the ones this summer were some of the most moving and touching marches and speeches I've ever heard, personally. When we get into the night stuff, like I call it the night stuff. When we get into the, some of those are also marches. Some of them are marches that got wilder or got attacked or whatever. She kind of messed me up a little bit, the amount of violence you see, the amount of people being hurt by police, being gassed, being tackled, being thrown, the amount of blood you see, the amount of people that you help out of situations, the amount of people that help you out of situations. It's funny because I see a lot of people now, like they go back and try and like jump on people's decisions on this, that, and I'm like, you don't know what it was like, bro. And like, if you think about people, who be in situations, I think about the cops sometimes, they be in situations and they're like, well, you can't judge me. Yeah, because you shouldn't have been in the situation in the first place. And for me, that's not a hard position to take. People are like, well, are you feeling bad for the cops? No, it's not a hard position for me to take because I don't think there should be cops. So you shouldn't be in a position to have to do that shit. We shouldn't be out there trying to fight you for it.
A lot of times when people got tear gas, when the police responded that way, was it provoked, as they were saying, as all the storyboards put out in the news? Like you said, water bottles getting thrown, stuff like that.
I mean, I never saw the police respond in a way that was appropriate. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
If you got a crowd of people, let's just say, for example, I'm not sure it's ever even happened, but the police, like, they claimed it one day and nobody was ever able to come to corroborate it, but one day the police said they declared a riot because someone threw a brick. You got a crowd of people. We in Portland, Oregon. You got a no-fly zone. You got federal building 20 stories high. You got feds on the shit. You got cameras. People got roofs. You got all that helicopters. I seen the scanner shit. It can track all the people. Each individual from the sky. All that shit. They got the cell phone to track all this shit. Somebody threw a brick. You couldn't catch him.
Right. Yeah.
You gassed 3,700 people because somebody threw a brick.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? We got gassed during a hip hop concert. During a protest and Ann Hardesty had just left. City commissioner, they gassed us half an hour after she left. Her staff got gassed that night. They'll call a riot if somebody throws a plastic water bottle. That's not a riot, dog. If somebody throws a water bottle right now, is that a riot in a crowd? Is that a riot? No. So what defines a riot? Like, the police weren't actually following any real laws or guidelines to do what they were doing.
Right.
They were given the permission to do this, and they can only do certain things. The only reason they even started calling riots and not, illegal assemblies or whatever, unlawful assemblies, is because they were told they couldn't use tear gas unless it was a riot situation. So once that rule passed, that's when they started declaring it a riot every night. There was no difference from before. They just started calling it that, and they needed the news to support that. That's all it is.
Has the damage, the violence and the images of the businesses being damaged and trash cans being set on fire, do you think that helped? A lot of people are saying that damaged the message of Black Lives Matter.
So I have a funky take on Black Lives Matter because I like it. But here's why I don't. Black Lives Matter was formed by some black women, cis women, and trans women, and they created a system that was for black lives that really depended on socialism. That's what Black Lives Matter is about. What people say about Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with any of that. There's a million Black Lives Matter teams, organizations, groups, whatever, Portland, everywhere else. They have nothing to do with any of that shit. They're just like, Black Lives Matter, let me get a bond. Let me get some nonprofit money. I started a nonprofit, Black Lives Matter, let me get some money. That's all this is about. Right? Yeah. So, yeah, when the business, so if your message is, I'm trying to get this money for my school, Black Lives Matter, then yeah, people tearing stuff up is going to be a bad look for you. Because you don't really care about what you're doing. You want money for your school, Black Lives Matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're saying that shit because it sounds good, right? It's been popping. But the reality of it is, this is really a socialist movement. It's not saying that there can't be any money or anything like that. It's not anti-capitalist, but it's a socialist movement that says, hey, we've moved too far in this direction. Capitalism is destroying everything. We need to bring this back, get things more even, get people more evened out. This is what needs to happen. So what's happening is you have people who have stolen the mantle of Black Lives Matter for their capitalist gains, attacking people on the anarchist side because they're also yelling Black Lives Matter. This is apart from the police in the right wing. This is just black people who said this thing that other black people are doing is popular, so that's mine too. And then white people or anarchists or whatever you want to call it, some of them are not white. A lot of them are not white actually, and they're saying Black Lives Matter because they do. And then you're arguing with each other over the middle about what's going on.
Yeah.
So really, just the framing of that question, did Black Lives Matter get hijacked by the socialists away from the black people? It's a socialist, a black movement. What happened is we just split it in half, and we don't like. So there is no Black Lives Matter, and that's the part that frustrates me because we should have that, but we don't actually have that because we're too busy fighting over whether we're black or socialist.
Like it or not, when I first heard the term, it seemed divisive to me to begin with because
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it's an action phrase that immediately pits me against you. You know what I mean? And it's hard to get the people that you need to understand where you're coming from. It's hard for them to join that movement or even understand it if right away you're going to play this divisive borderline where it's me against you.
Yeah.
So,
see, for me, I
you
saw
know,
it
and now
differently.
then that's how you got all lives matter.
Yeah.
You know, and all that. You know what I mean?
So for me, I saw it differently. I thought it was quite genius because the way I saw it is, it's really a Rorschach to me, right? If I say Black Lives Matter, and you're not black, right? You have an option. You have to translate what I'm saying, and automatically you can translate that to he's saying my life doesn't matter, which is not what I said. Or you can translate it to, yes, Black lives do matter.
And I think that's what happened. Is
And
for
so
the counter argument.
And so it becomes a thing that instantly tells you, if I say to you, hey man, Black lives matter, and you're like, what? I automatically know that you're defensive about something. But the problem with that is also, just because someone's defensive, that could be ignorance. So to use that as a gauge, he won't say Black lives matter, and now you'd assume that you're a racist. Now we've just jumped the gun. Right? And so that's where it becomes dangerous, because people aren't just like as simple as answer this question and now I know who you are.
Right.
That's not how that works. So it's a mixed bag to me. It's a great phrase in that it makes people think. Black lives matter does not mean that white lives don't matter or that Asian lives don't matter. It just means my life matters. And the reason I have to say that is because people think it doesn't.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe me, let me show you some examples of where Black lives just didn't matter at all. You know what I mean? So for me, it's useful in that regard. And I always think that a slogan is good for starting a conversation, but it can't be the conversation.
That's interesting because I feel like, you know, God bless everybody that, you know, did stand up, you know, and march and felt like they were doing what they felt like was right. But, you know, it's hard because you really question sometimes how educated some people actually are about the issue, and which them coming out to be educated is a huge first step. But it hit me kind of that, you know, I questioned, does this, you know, 18-year-old white girl really know about social inequality?
That's the whole thing.
How it is systemic racism and how it really does exist.
Listen, white folks can take all the equity classes they want. Can have all the black friends and have black kids. It's never going to be the same. I can't tell you how many times I said, man, what are you doing? Why are you throwing rocks at the window? Because fuck them, that's a lawyer's building and that's where this. I said, do you know that's his office? Or are you smashing someone or are you smashing like a public defender's window?
Yeah.
Who's gonna help you when you get arrested next week?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't. Did you do a layout of the building? Did you do any checking? No, you just throw them into the building because you heard there was cops in here.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's walk off. Like, do what you want to do, bro. It's not my job.
Civil justice.
It's not my job to tell. I'm not a cop. I'm not telling you what to do.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, bro, is this the answer? And I walk off. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, well, that black guy said we shouldn't throw bucks through it. It's not that this black guy said it. So I made you think about it. And people don't want to think about shit. They want to be emotional. And that's part of the issue with constant protest, is that it's constant emotions. You're constantly trying to get that feeling back. People out there, people smoking weed, people high, people drunk, people do whatever they normally do on an evening night, whether they're at home or elsewhere, and then they're out here making decisions.
Well, there was
young, old, doesn't matter.
I felt, you know, and I know it is. It was a huge opportunity for people to get informed, for people to get educated about this issue.
Or to fuck shit up.
Yeah.
It just depends on your mood. Sometimes both. You know what I mean? like sometimes one of the. I mean, there are people like legit who go out there one night looking for chicks, one night looking to fight, one night looking to go tear the system down. You know what I mean? Like, it just, they're people. Just like you go to work some days, you go to work ready to work, you go to work ready to just act like you ain't doing shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same thing, man. Most of the time, it's just people who are frustrated with the system going out there saying, yo, what are we going to do? And everyone gets out there and go, hey, well, we're going to march. And use that march to educate each other and talk and see what we're going to do and plan and strategize. And then everyone just goes home. That's mostly what it is. And a couple of people just being there wilding out. A couple of people throw rocks or run up the street and do something else. Some of the people break off and help homeless people. Like, but you don't see that in the news. You just see the people that break off and do shit that's silly. And it's like, I shouldn't say it's silly always, but sometimes it's silly.
What progress has been made from after all the protests and everything? Is legislation, protocols? I mean, what?
We technically defunded the police because we reduced their budget. So I would say that, technically, not the way I would like to. I would like to not have a budget, but we definitely did reduce. We definitely stopped the 10-year streak of having $10+ million raises. Our budget 10 years ago was, I think in 2010 was 155 million. It's 200. It was 250 million last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's 230-something million. So we made some changes. We made some changes in that. We got the cops out of the schools. We got the cops off of Tri-Med. We got our weed money to stop going to the cops.
Yeah.
And we're having the conversations about body cams again. And we got an oversight committee improvement. Still isn't what I want, but it's better than what we had. So, you know, as much pressure as we put on the system, there definitely have been some changes that we've been able to see and functionally take. Nothing that we can really like feel in our souls yet. Like ambulance, well, I'm like, oh, I feel better now. The cops do none of that. But we're definitely seeing a cracking away, and there's definitely been a lot more. I think the biggest thing is the public attention on what the actual problems are. The police union. I came out in June last year talking about, yo, if we're gonna do this, it's the police union. It's not this other stuff. It's the police union. Hello, police union. that's where it's at. And now everyone is knocking on the door around the country. People are like, yo, police union, because everyone went to the same fight that we went, trying to make all these changes, passing laws, and then bam, police union says no. And now everyone sees it. Oh, it's the police union. Yes, it's the gang. Deal with the police union. We have to start to educate people on that, understand how it's different, how going against the police union does not go against the other unions, because honestly, the unions are an excellent path for a liberation for black people.
So there was the gang task force unit,
G.V.R.T.
then called Gun Violence Reduction Team.
G.V.R.T.
So that team got dismantled, and now all of a sudden there is the highest spike in shootings we've ever had in the city in however many years. What are your thoughts on the media's correlation between the Gun Violence Reduction Team being dismantled and the rise in number of shootings in Portland?
Because the media is trying to make that correlation.
It hurts my heart, first of all, to see all these black people getting shot, because it's mostly black people. It's tough because the black community here is not that large, so you lose 10, 20 people in a year. That's a big deal, bro. Like that could be a whole class. You know what I'm saying? The kids, and it's usually kids. You know, but what frustrates me is that, and I don't want to get too much into Portland, quiet stuff, but a lot of the things that the police did or didn't do really escalated situations, especially over the summer. So, like, I know over the summer there was a girl that was shot by a dude. The police didn't arrest him. Months didn't arrest him. Everyone knew the gangs were looking for him. There's all kind of shootings while they were looking. The cops wouldn't arrest. So, yeah, and the cops they can't respond to calls because they ain't too busy gassing people at protest. There's more cops, first of all. You know what I mean? Like, all the cops ain't out here. There's more cops. You know what I'm saying? So, like, where are they at? Are they off work? They all off work? So at night, the only cops are the other riot cops. No other cops. Who's pulling people over there? Because I see that happening too.
Right. It was still
happening. You know what
I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. So y'all could assign somebody to go find this dude for his safety and everyone's safety. He done shot somebody who people ain't gonna let it slide. And they know this because that's their job. So instead of not going around harassing people or using the knowledge that they already had from being on that team to know that these people they need to pay attention to, they just ignore it. And then what happens? Gang shootings happen. And the cops go, it's because we defund the police. Get out of here. It's because you're not doing your jobs, which is why we're out here in the first place. The cops have been doing their job all this time, people wouldn't even be out here.
And I think a lot of people forget why that particular unit was dismantled in the first place, because
they were just tracking black people.
Right. and the numbers proved it. Like, it was just, and there was like very little arrest for the amount of people they were stopping and frisking and all that. Yeah.
Listen, if you ever watched a cop TV show, you know what the gang task force does. They sell drugs, bro. Like, stop. Like, what are we doing out here?
For real.
Why are we playing? That's what the gang task force is for. So when the gang task force, or G.V.R.T, Gun Violence Reduction Team, which sounds great, gang task force, got shut down. They're going to say, oh, now we can't control guns. You can still have cops that do the job that they were doing. You just don't have a team that collects the information and targets black people. Right. No one took away your gun and badge.
Yeah, nobody took away your ability to do...
No! No!
Yeah.
And if all the cops that were available were on the protest anyway, then your G.V.R.T wouldn't have been available anyway.
Yeah, right.
Because it's the same cops.
Right.
That's how we know them all.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I just find it so you know, in the last week or so, I've seen that correlation being made so tough in local news media that, you know, all these rising shootings are happening, and well, you used to have this unit, you know, and then they have a officer who was formerly on that unit getting interviewed and saying, you know, why this is happening, and like you were saying, acting like his hands are tied, like now I can't do my job. Like what? It's like, well, what are your thoughts on Mr. Wheeler?
Tevis? How much time we got? Tevis, man, you know,
well,
when you're, you know, before Ted Wheeler came to be our mayor, he was a Republican. You know that.
I did
he
not
was
even
a Republican.
Yeah.
Ted Wheeler's grandfather, one of the two, founded the town of Wheeler, Oregon, on the coast in 18-something.
Okay.
You know, they were heavily involved in the kicking out of the Indians and, you know, forming their town. So we know who Ted Wheeler is. We know who his family is. And he's just the most liberal of them. His job, when he came in and ran, he had a shaggy haircut and glasses, and was all goofy and stuff, right? But he came with all these resumes. He climbed Mount Everest, you know, all this stuff. So he's like, oh, he's a nice liberal guy. So he changed his thing a couple years before, and then he became a Democrat, and then he got himself in office. Ted Wheeler is one of them people that becomes like a senator and never does anything. He's literally like a younger version of like a Chuck Schumer. That's all he is. He's a Beto O'Rourke. You know, he's a what's the mayor Buttigieg. Oh, yeah. He's one of them, bro. He's not a terrible human being, maybe, but like he's not gonna do anything for you, right? He doesn't actually care about like a progressive values or anything. He just keeps a gay guy around so he can say, I've got a guy. He keeps a black guy around, I got a guy. You know, and that's what he does. I keep a woman around. I got a black woman. You know, cool. I don't let her do anything, but I got her. You know what I mean? And that's what Ted Wheeler does. His job, really, his family. He's the heir apparent to millions in timber money. I don't know if you know anything about these timber kids in Oregon. There's a lot of them. I got a few friends that are timber kids, and they don't work. It's them kids that don't work, and they have studios downtown. They got buildings, and they be like, oh, I just live in my studio, and they just have parties and shit because their parents own timberland down in Middle Oregon, and every year they log and they make millions from the paper industries and all that kind of stuff. And so everyone in the family gets a check. Ted Wheeler's one of the big ones. He gets big money, and he's going to be the one that owns it all. He's just protecting his interests. He's here to keep the cops in place, to keep the union in place, to keep the business interests in place, to keep these developers running through here, spending money with his people. Same thing happened at Red House. If you look at that Red House situation, look how that worked out. Did you notice that a bunch of people just said, this people that did not have a loan, because they have decided that they are not citizens of this country, we're going to just protect this house. And the mayor sent the cops in to come get him, and then we said, send him again. He refused. Because the Russian dude was going to own the property. And he wanted it, but then he just sold it back at base price because he got that property for $200,000 on the corner of Albina and Skidmore. What was happening there? But all of a sudden it just let's go away. It all went away, didn't it? Why? Because it's dirty, and everybody knows it's dirty. We don't play with games with it. We know it's dirty. It goes away. Media, city. It's what it is. It's the mayor's office, the Portland Development Commission is called Prosper Portland now, and the Portland Police Association. That's it.
What do you think about the Truth and Reconciliation thing that they?
They already said it's not gonna. It's only going to focus on cases involving race, and they're not going to involve mental health and all that. So wait a minute. Like 12 of the last shootings involve mental health. He's going to skip all those. So what he did was. And Ted Wheeler has a love for a Desmond Tutu that I don't understand in South Africa. He thinks this is like South Africa for some reason. It's not. But a Desmond Tutu and them put together a Truth and Reconciliation Committee after apartheid had been toppled. And what they did was, because what was happening was, after the black people were free, they were like about to go kill all the white people that had been slaving them and shit, right? So they had that commission, to try and bring these families back together, to try and say, hey, we have to live together, we can't be killing each other. And it was really to protect the white people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It wasn't to protect us.
Yeah.
Ted Wheeler wants to have a Truth and Reconciliation Committee while the police are still abusing us so that we can feel better. That's not even what it's for. Just use some words and quoted somebody and then just did something different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's disrespectful. It's not even just ignorant. It's disrespectful. Mm-hmm. And he knows it because Ted's not a stupid dude.
Mm-hmm.
He might be a dense or pretend to be, but he's not stupid. You know what I mean? So, like, to me, I consider it an insult.
What would you say are probably the biggest driving forces behind Portland's growing houseless population?
I think it's a couple of things. For years, Portland has been a desirable-ish destination for the houseless because it doesn't get too hot, doesn't get too cold, and we have decent services. For a long time, we had decent services, which came along with not having a large population. Mm-hmm. When I moved to Portland, we had like 400,000 people here or something like that, like in the area. So like now there's like 400,000 people in Beaverton, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's different than it was before. We've priced out a significant portion of our people. And that's just an issue, not just because like, oh, people are lazy, but like people who have full-time jobs are homeless.
I mean, you said people being priced out, and I think of a few folks I know that work full-time.
One-bedroom studios, $1,600 a month.
Can't even, I mean, that's, yeah.
Bro, what? If you're making $12 an hour, how?
Yeah. Even people making $17, $18 an hour, that's...
It doesn't come up to that much. After taxes, your check is like, what, you bring home like $3,000 a month?
Yeah. And you paying $16 for a studio?
That's not your car, your bills, your nothing, student loans, and none of that shit. Nothing, your food.
Why do you think such the development, such the boom in Portland?
Man, people came in here. Mm-hmm. I think in the 1 year it was like 200,000 people moved here from like New York and California. Mm-hmm. Like the prices that they're willing to pay in those cities, it was still low here. For
it was still cheaper than what they were paying elsewhere.
Of course they'll move here.
Yeah.
If you bought a condo in San Francisco, or your dad left you a condo in San Francisco, it's worth like $5 million. Mm-hmm. For like a 400 square foot apartment. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna sell that, move to Portland, buy a whole house for like $500,000, which is probably $250,000 more than it's worth. But I'm gonna spend that $500,000, and when I do that, all the property values around me go up.
Yeah. Well, now,
right?
Yeah.
So then when that happens, the people that are next to you are like, oh, I'm gonna sell my house to a Californian or a New Yorker.
Damn.
The price value it goes up. Now people who are trying to buy a house can't buy one. Yeah. And people who want to rent a house are saying, well, the house over here is selling for this much. This one for $500,000, so rent's now $3,000. So now you can't rent in the neighborhood. Yeah. And every neighborhood's doing this. Because people who are buying don't even know what the hot neighborhoods are. So they're buying houses in Lents for $400,000, $500,000. Yeah. And I'm like, no, don't do that shit. You know what I'm saying? And price out, as great, because my price value, it went the fuck up. Yeah. But like, I know it's not real too. And also like, it's messed up because now I have people living on my street in their cars.
Straight up, yeah.
Because my house is now worth $400,000. Yeah. But people are living on the street.
Has that damaged, or how we used to know it, what it was, has that damaged the culture of the city? Has that damaged the aesthetic of the city?
Yeah.
Bringing in all these people.
When I came to Portland in '92, bro, I remember, I mean, I'll be honest, when I first came to Portland in '92, we came off the train, hopped off over there at Union Station, and I was like, this is horrible. And the reason I said it was horrible is because I was like, we just left Queens for this. And it was under the bridge, you know how I was going to Union Station, it's like, ugh, why am I here? And they were like, no, it's fine. Then we left Union Station, I was like, oh, this city is beautiful. Yeah. This is a beautiful place. I still hated it here, but it was beautiful here at least. At the very least, it was gorgeous. Yeah. It was clean, there was no cigarette butts on the ground. You could walk everywhere, you check out the fountains in the streets. There wasn't no dogs, like, jumping in. It was clean, it was nice. You didn't see no homeless people really, except for, she was over there on the Union Station. Yeah. Fast forward 30 years, it's like Union Station's all downtown now. Yeah. All of downtown pretty much looks like Union Station. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's still people, don't get it wrong, the city ain't dying, there's still a dude right here wearing a jester hat walking around keeping Portland weird. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, let's not pretend like, it's dying or anything. That's what happened. That's what happened is people realized this was a place that you could come and live That's like I did in '92. Because you can come and live here and make a decent wage and live.
Yeah.
And you could come here and retire here. You can come here and retire at 30.
Yeah.
If you work hard, stack your chips. If you made $1 million in Portland in the '90s, you were set. Yeah. Even in the early 2000s, you were set. So it's like, just the fact that it's so expensive now out of nowhere, and then you're surprised when people are homeless, like.
Because that was never Portland's culture. That was for people that have been here for a long time, were born and raised here, like myself.
Past the 15 years, that homelessness is new.
I mean, they had food parties. You know, you go to the park, people be cooking, but you get a plate of food. You know, like the culture here was, I wouldn't say hippie. Some might call it hippie. I would say it was just more
helpful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. By all means. Yeah. And part of what attracted people here, I feel like, has now been dissolved. Because we've created this, you know, condo sky-rise, property value booming, sell, raise.
Yeah, like I seen a dude the other day, man. I was going to a meeting, man, and it kind of messed me up, man. And like, he's asking for dollars, like cracking jokes, and like he's walking off, and I look at him, and I'm like, yo, I went to high school with this dude.
I've had the same.
And you're younger than me.
There used to be resources. Like I remember coming downtown. There was methadone clinics. There was the shelters. I mean, there was a lot of things, but I mean, literally, you could see what used to be a methadone clinic bought up, became an office building. Mm-hmm. What used to be a homeless shelter bought up, knocked down, became condominiums. Like
they were in expensive areas. They didn't just have it there anymore.
And what do you expect is gonna happen? You know what I mean? When you do that, like.
But then they build new ones that have all these rules, and people can't even stay in them. Mm-hmm. Like, you're gonna build these rules. You gotta be clean. You can't do drugs. You can't do this. You gotta have a job. He's homeless, dog. Mm-hmm. He gonna go through shit. It's hard to stay in an apartment, let alone. Right. You can make it harder for people. Like I talk to homeless people. Like, I'd rather live in a tent in the park than try and live in one of these buildings, bro.
Right. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah. I've had the same conversation with people.
So like, I'm not homeless because everything's cool, bro.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pass your credit check. Like, what you want, bro? Like, right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm homeless.
If you raised in the city, your resources are in the city.
Yeah.
Your family or whatever your resources are. So now, if you are outpriced of the place where you grew up, I mean, you can't just pick up and go to another part
of the city
when you got everything else over here. You know.
Portland became popular, but where people actually moved were in the suburbs. Mm-hmm. People moved to Vancouver, Beaverton, Hillsborough, Gresham, etc. If you look at those areas, they're bigger than Portland now for the most part. Mm-hmm. Like, they're like just as big, if not bigger. There's more people in Washington County, I think, than Multnomah County now. Like, it's wild, right? But what comes with that, a suburban culture, is I drive my car into my garage. I walk into my house. I watch TV. I get up in the morning. I take a shower. I get back in my car in my garage. I pull into my work driveway. I get out. I go into work. I get lunch. I see actual people. Wow, it's crazy out here. I go back into work. I get back in my car. I go back into my job. I go back to my house. And all they see is like the actual city for like 1 hour. Mm-hmm. So they say, wow, it's just terrible out here. I'm like, bro, catch the bus.
Yeah.
You will see so much more life and realize it's okay.
Yeah.
Everything doesn't have to be pretty.